Hi everyone. Should be a good evening, everyone. I'm Reverend Yuko Kojima, head priest of Zenshuji. Now we opened a lecture series. And welcome to our 100th anniversary lecture series. I'm in Japan now, and today we have a special guest for the as a speaker. That's from the also Japan too. Today's special guest, Yuko-san, very special lady that as a Soto Zen priest. Ron-san, could you introduce the guest speaker?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lon Kershige, and this is our fourth monthly event for the 100th anniversary of Zenshuji. I hope some of you have been with us before. I recognize faces, which is great. Today, actually, all three of us are in Japan. So I am at Yuko Sensei's temple in Tokyo. And we found out that we can't be in the same room because we get terrible feedback on Zoom. So we learned the hard way. So we made a mad dash for me to move downstairs. So I'm here to welcome Yuko Wakayama to introduce her talk. And let me just say how I met Yuko Sensei. I was practicing at Eiheiji for an international 5-day session 3 years ago, and she was one of the teachers. And I found out afterwards that she is the first female teacher in almost 800 years of Eiheiji's history. And many of you may know Eiheiji is the founding head temple for Soto Zen in Japan. So since Dogen's time, she is the first female teacher. She's also a teacher at her own, the monastery where she was ordained at Aichi Senmon Ni-sodo in Nagoya, where she trained with Aoyama Roshi, Aoyama Shindo, who was probably one of the most famous Zen nuns in Japan. And she still teaches there. And of course, she's soon to become the head abbot of this temple where we're at, Shogakuji in Tokyo, where she lives and holds Zazen Kai. You will hear more about Yuko's life story. That's the kind of purpose of this talk, or the main topic. So I won't go into those details, but let me just give you some background, her educational background. She has an undergraduate degree from Chuo University here in Tokyo. She has an undergraduate degree from Komazawa Daigaku University, which is the head Soto Zen temple or university in Japan. And then a master's degree in Chinese Buddhism from Komazawa University. And I will find the link and put it into the chat for her article that she had published in Tricycle magazine in 2019. And it's similar to the story you'll hear about her life, maybe, but without the pictures that she's going to provide in her talk today. So with that, I'll get the link and I'll put it in the chat. With that, I'll just let Yuko-san take over. So thank you, Yuko.
Thank you.
よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。Good evening, everyone. I'm Yuko Wakayama. Nice to meet you all. Here in Japan, it's Sunday, 9 a.m. So I would say good morning to you. We are 16 hours difference and 8,800 kilometers distance. But still, thanks for the modern technology, we can meet each other online. It's wonderful. First of all, congratulations for 100th anniversary of Zenshuji. I'm very honored to give a talk on this auspicious occasion. Today's title, I want to share my screen first. Okay. Today's title is One Nun, Two Faiths, and Two Countries. In fact, I didn't make this wonderful title. Professor Long Kurashige made it. As he told you before, 3 years ago, we together wrote an article for Tricycle magazine. It was about my spiritual path. So today's talk is based on that article. Before my talk, I'd like to say thank you to Kojima Sensei and Sangha members. Okay. 2 years ago, it was just before the pandemic starts, I visited Zenshuji and Sokoji with my master. This is my master. And thank you very much for your hospitality. I still have good memories in my heart. It was really interesting travel. It was fun. So these are today's topics. At first, I'd like to talk how I became a Buddhist nun. Maybe many of you are interested in this story. Today's title is One Nun, Two Faiths. One nun is, of course, myself, and two faiths is Catholicism and Buddhism. Because I was a Catholic nun before and converted into Buddhist nun. So I'd like to talk about this conversion story. And the second topic is Zen practice in Japan. After I was ordained as a Buddhist nun, I entered a women's monastery in Japan and practiced there about 3.5 years. Then later, I came to the United States and practiced at Mount Equity Zendo in Pennsylvania. I stayed there for 2.5 years. So I can experience two different types of practice. So I can compare these. Of course, this is not ordinary practice, just from my personal opinion, personal experience. But I want to pick up some differences and some common points. Then, after I talk about Zen practice in the United States, at the end, I'd like to talk about integration of two faiths, two countries, how I integrate and harmonize some differences of practice. These are today's topics. So, first, when I was a high school student, I lost my aunt, my lovely aunt. I really loved her, and she took good care of me, but she suddenly passed away, so I suffered a lot. At the time, my best friend was a Catholic, so she invited me to her church. I went there several times. Then one day, I saw a movie in the church. The title was Brothers and Sister Moon. Some of you may know this story. This is a very old Italian movie and the life story of Saint Francis. Saint Francis, it says Francesco in Italian. Francesco was a son of a rich merchant, and he had a lot of money, so he could do anything what he wanted to do. But one day, he went to a crusade then he almost died. After he came back from the war, his sense of value completely changed. He realized the beauty of nature and preciousness of life. And he decided to leave his parents' house. He went to the field and found a broken chapel, San Damiano, and he tried to rebuild this broken chapel. He took one stone and put it and piled up. Day by day, stone by stone, just little by little, he rebuilt that chapel. And he realized day by day, he grows too. And he knows heaven's glory. This is very beautiful movie. And that song is very beautiful. But I'm deaf tone, so I cannot sing, I'm sorry. But these are lyrics. It was very beautiful. I was really moved. And I want to live like Francesco. I was pretty good life, good education, and I was not very rich, but I could do quite good life. But something was missing. And I thought, oh, I found my life. I'd like to live like him. And this woman is Saint Claire. She helped Francesco. So, oh, I'd like to become a sister like her. That was my first intention to enter the monastery. Several years ago, I visited a Catholic monastery for meditation. I really liked it. And several times I went there and did meditation. And finally, I decided to enter that Catholic monastery. This is just outside of Kanto region near Tokyo. And this monastery was a cloistered monastery. So there was very tall wall surrounded the monastery. We are not allowed to go out and no one can enter. It's just like a jail. But inside was very beautiful, beautiful garden, and the building was very not new. It was quite old, but the sisters thoroughly cleaned. So it was very clean and very quiet and very good atmosphere. These are sisters. When I was there, it was more than 20 years ago. At the time, we are not allowed to take pictures inside. So I don't have any pictures of my sister's outfit. But for this talk, I checked the internet. Then I was very surprised because now they have a homepage. And there are many pictures of sisters. So I was so surprised. It changed. And when I was there, only 12 sisters were practiced there, but now more sisters joined. So it means this congregation is very active and they alive. I'm very happy. So I entered this monastery and become a Catholic nun. The daily life was very strict schedule. Every day we woke up at midnight and pray for about 1 hour and went to bed again. So we separate, interrupt our sleep every night. And the next morning, we woke up around 4 o'clock and pray again. So in one day, there are several time for prayer, and totally about 8 hours we prayed every day. Since it's cloistered monastery, so main activity is prayer. So we sing a song, chant, and read the Bible, etc. And the other time, main job was cleaning, like chapel, kitchen, and vegetable garden. Everywhere was very clean and very quiet, because we are not allowed to talk each other except for prayer. But only one time, 45 minutes a day, we had recreation time. So only for that time, all the sisters chat very loudly. But after 45 minutes, the leader ring the bell, ding, then everybody stop. It's amazing. They're so organized. And after, you can see this sister wearing white veil. She's a novice. I was there for 3 years, so I was still novice. So I was wearing white veil like this. And after 8 years, she took a final vow. When sister take a final vow, she is registered in Vatican. So she has to stay in this monastery for whole life. She's not allowed to go out anymore. But you can see these sisters' faces. They look very happy and very cheerful. I was so moved, and I really enjoyed this kind of monastic life. It's very different from ordinary life, but we can find happiness in this kind of monastic life. I found it, and I wanted to continue this Catholic nun's life. It was really enjoyable for me, peaceful for me. But after 3 years, I felt something missing. I couldn't exactly know why. But I met one priest. He changed my life completely. As you know, in Catholic, nuns cannot lead a mass. So every day, one male priest came to our monastery and led the mass. And one time, one priest came. He was working as an ecumenical moving, interfaith dialogue with another religion. Then he gave a sermon about Zazen. I was so shocked. I didn't understand why, but something, the word Zazen grabbed my heart. And I realized the something missing was something Japanese sense of prayer. The Catholic prayer was very beautiful, but for me, it was very Western, and I felt something different. But when I heard the sermon about Zazen, that spirituality fit me. Then I thought, oh, I try to practice Zazen at least one time. Otherwise, I regret all my life, whole my life. So I asked to the abbess to try Zazen at least one time. But it was cloistered monastery, so it was impossible to try Zazen inside of the monastery. And abbess said, if you really want to try Zazen, you have to leave the monastery. It was very hard decision for me. but it's a matter of my life. So I want to try Zazen at least one time. So I decided to leave this monastery to practice Zazen. When I entered this monastery, I was allowed to bring only few things, a few sets of underwear and some things around me, only in little one bag. So I gave back my robe and they gave me back that bag. Then I just jumped out of the monastery. But I didn't know anything around there. I didn't know anyone outside of the monastery. So, what can I do? Then in front of me, one taxi passed by. So, this one. I just hailed the taxi and asked the driver, please take me to that Buddhist temple. The driver said, which temple? I said, I don't know, whichever. Then that driver took me to the biggest temple in that town, and it was Soto Zen Temple by chance. Moreover, 1 month before, the Aoyama Roshi, who is my teacher now, came to that temple for giving talk. So that priest knew Aoyama Roshi. Then I said, I want to try Zazen and blah, blah, blah. When I talked to the priest, he said, go to Nagoya to see Aoyama Roshi. You're a woman, so it's better to go to Aoyama Roshi. Then I decided to go to Nagoya for practicing Zazen. In Nagoya, there is a women's monastery, and Aoyama Roshi is the abbess of that monastery. Aoyama Roshi said, come to Sesshin. But I didn't know what is Sesshin. I was so afraid, but she said, come, so I went. And I was very surprised. Sesshin was an intention practice from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. Just sit zazen and walking meditation, sit zazen and walking meditation, just continue in silence. I was familiar with silence, so my mind was very, was ready for the silent practice, but my body was not ready for sitting zazen. It was very hard. I thought I almost die. But eventually I survived. It was 3 days session. Then after the session, I met Aoyama Roshi and speak about my Catholic experience. And also I want to practice Zazen. And Aoyama Roshi said, you know, the Buddha, founder of Buddhism, he was a prince of India, but he gave up everything. He gave up family, he gave up wealth, everything, then enter practice. If you don't give up anything, do you think you can understand Zazen? That was a very powerful question for me. Especially after 3 days session, my mind was very refreshing and her voice struck me. Oh, okay. I just want to jump into Buddhist world. Then I decided to be ordained. There were several problems, but I cleared them and I decided to become a Buddhist nun. I just converted from Catholic nun to Buddhist nun. This is an ordination ceremony. I wore white kimono. In Japan, white kimono indicates dead person. So I dead in the past life and reborn as a Buddhist disciple. So this is Aoyama Roshi. It was very young because it was 20 years ago. And she shaved my hair. And I received Buddha's robe one by one, koromo, rakusu, okesa, put one by one. And little by little, I became Buddhist disciple. It was very symbolic. And at the end, I received a kichimyaku. It's kind of certification as a Buddhist disciple. So teacher and disciple, just one by one, it's a transmission of Dharma. This is a history of women's monastery, but I just skip. And the practice in the women's monastery, the main practice is Zazen. In morning service, it usually goes more than 1 hour in Seiza sitting. It was quite hard. And meal practice, we eat oryoki bowls in Soto. And this is religious mendicancy, alms round. We practice it twice a month, visit each house and chant sutra, and they gave offerings. Sometimes we are scolded, we are shouted, and so it's very good practice for giving up ego self. And this is a goeka class singing, and also tea ceremony. These practice based on Zen spirit, so it helps practice. Just like this, I practiced in this monastery for 3 years, but I still felt something missing because I become a Buddhist nun for practicing Zazen, but in this monastery, Zazen is only morning and night. And the daytime is like study or work. It was like just like ordinary life for me, because I have been praying 8 hours every day in the Catholic monastery, but in the Buddhist monastery, Buddhist convent, Zazen only for 2 hours. So it's not enough, I thought. Then I complained to my teacher. My teacher was so upset. You don't understand Dogen Zenji's teaching. Dogen Zenji said, every activity is Zazen. So you are not, you don't understand his teaching. If you want to sit more, go to America, she said. I was so surprised. Here, Japan, I'm living in Japan. This is Dogen Zenji's country. Then I was ordained as a Buddha's disciple. If I want to practice Zazen, do I have to go to America? It doesn't make sense. I was upset too. Then she finally kicked me out, go to America. Then finally I came to the United States. It was Mount Equity Zendo in Pennsylvania. The abbess was Reverend Diane Benaj Roshi. She also practiced in the women's monastery in Japan, the same monastery as I was practiced. So she was a senpai, senior of myself. Then she welcomed me and she led my practice in this Mount Equity Zendo. I was so grateful. It was so grateful for me. And here, there are some pictures. This is Daigak Sensei. I met him in this Mount Equity Zendo. And Mount Equity is a very beautiful place. And there's a forest back of the monastery, and very vast land and vegetable garden. The Sangha members planting trees, and we're painting the house and now this is tea time, I experienced many different things compared to Japan. And one time they had a national novice training. So many novices, novice monks and nuns came to Mount Equity Zendo, and Daien Roshi read practice, Japanese traditional monastic practice. It was about 5 days, I guess. It was really good experience. And local newspaper put the article on the newspaper. And also, Daien Roshi had Shinzan Shiki. She became official abbess in Soto Zen. So we made Okesa Hunzoe for Daien Roshi. All the Sangha members attend, and I taught how to sew Hunzoe, and she put this Okesa for that ceremony. And also we visited a yoga center. If I was, I stayed in Japan in the monastery. It was, maybe it was impossible to visit yoga or other monasteries or other temples. But in America, it's more free and there are more, many possibilities for practice. So I really enjoyed it. And one time we went to university and taught calligraphy to students. This is Bucknell University student. She looked very happy after writing Chinese characters. And this is floating lantern ceremony. We used a paper bag and put lantern inside and float in the river. It's an Obon ceremony. And this is cherry blossoms, American cherry blossoms. We went to look at flowers. It was also nice. So I was practiced at Mount Equity Zendo 2.5 years. And Mount Equity is in the East Coast. So I also visited North Carolina, Chapel Hill Zen Center, or Great Tree Monastery, etc. I think my experience helps Zazen. When I was in Japan, Zazen is Zazen. I gave up everything else. But in America, day by day, I could experience very different things. And I realized all different things, all different activities helps my sitting. It was really nice realization. And this is Shogakuji, my current temple. It's a middle of city, so it is surrounded by tall buildings, very different atmosphere to Mount Equity. This Shogakuji is founded in 1616 as Shingon sect, then later converted to Soto Zen temple, but burned out by fire of World War II and later rebuilt the temple. So it's quite new buildings. We have a long history, but new buildings. Since 5 abbesses ago, it's nuns temple. Before that, nuns are not allowed to have disciples. So just 5 abbesses ago, it's nuns temple. And current abbess is 31st. And I will take over soon. We have tea ceremony house and tea garden, and we teach a traditional tea ceremony. This is a Zen culture, so especially good for lay people. And we also have Zazen Kai, Zazen meeting. I'm planning to build a Zazen hall like Zenshuji. This is our Sangha members. Okay, at the end, I'd like to talk about integration of two faiths, two countries, how I integrate these differences of practice. So first, I'd like to pick up the differences between Catholic prayer and Zazen. In my opinion, Catholic prayer always has an object, such as God, Jesus Christ, Mother Mary, Holy Spirit, etc. We pray, I prayed toward something transcendent. I always tell this story, but the symbol of Catholicism is white lily, like this. It's very pure and bloom toward one direction. Just like when I was a Catholic nun, I just pray for God. I try not to see other things. You remember we sisters wore a robe and veil. Under that veil, we wore a head cover. It's very thick material and very tight. So when I wore the head cover, my ears are covered and quite difficult to hear. And it's very hard, tight, so difficult to open our mouth. And later, on top of head cover, when I put a veil, my sight become very narrow. So in Catholicism, it helps concentrate on God. Then try not see something bad, try not hear something bad, try not say something bad. Then keep purity and concentrate on God. I think we also have this kind of element in Buddhism. We pray for example, we pray for Buddha or Amida Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and make request or gratitude toward Buddha. In any religion, there are this kind of sense of prayer. In this sense, it's the same. But in Zazen, especially Dogen's Shikan Taza, there is no object. We don't sit for Buddha, right? So no object means no subject. So subject and object is one. It indicates a lotus flower, I think. Lotus flower blooms to all directions. There is no one direction towards Buddha, because everything is Buddha. If there is no object, everything is Buddha, and we are one with everything. It blooms 10 directions, every directions, it means no direction. So we just be receptive, everything, and use it. This is Jijuyu Zammai. This point is very different for me. And second point, difference, two countries. I would say the difference is tradition and creation. Japanese Zen practice is quite traditional and also conservative. We try to keep tradition. Compared to that, American practice is very creative. And they just from my opinion, but in Mount Equity Zendo, they combine many practices, not only shikantaza, but yoga practice, especially mindfulness. People liked mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh, or Tibetan Buddhism, Korean Buddhism. They combine mixture and made new things. I think American people are very good at creation. So these are differences. And how I integrate these differences of myself, the answer is this Dogen Zenji's words. It's from Genjo Koan. To study Buddhism is to study ourselves. To study ourselves is to forget ourselves. This is a phrase from Genjo Koan. If I see these differences as an object, there are contradictions. Catholic prayer and Zazen are different. Japanese practice and American practice are not the same. Then always conflict. But the reality is everything was my experience. There is no contradiction in myself. When I was a Catholic nun, I was 100% Catholic nun. And now I am a Buddhist nun. Now I'm 100% Buddhist nun. Then all the different experience was necessary for me. And I appreciate all these different teachings. They are richness of my faith. I don't see them as objects. I see the subject. Subject means myself. Dogen said, to study Buddhism is to study ourselves. So don't see the practice as something separate from me, but don't look at myself, eko hensho, look at myself. And if I really forget myself, forget my ego self, I can see the perfect harmony of these contradictions. I'm living here and now with all embracing all these different practices. So I'm really happy now. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Yuko Sensei. We have, Yuko Sensei promised she would finish in 40 minutes, and she finished in 40 minutes. So thank you. We have plenty of time. We have plenty of time for questions. And so as we've done in the past, you can either use the raise hand button, which is down on the bottom of the Zoom screen, at least on my Zoom screen, under reactions, I think. Or you can use the chat to ask a question, and I'll relay that to Yuko Sensei. So why don't I open up the floor for questions? Hold on, let me change the view here to look for questions. Well, as you folks are thinking about your questions, let me start with one with Yuko that may take a little bit, because I limited the title of this talk to 2 countries because she was in America and certainly in Japan, but she has lived in many more than 2 countries. And so she cut out the whole Europe side of her practice, because after living at Mount Equity, she was sent to Europe for 1 year, 2 years? How long was that, Yuko?
1 year in Europe.
1 year. And she went to many different Zen centers in many different countries in Europe. So let me start with a question where if you're to add Europe, you mentioned creativity in the US and tradition in Japan for Zazen practice or Buddhist practice. What about in Europe? How does that compare with US and Japan?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. Yes, you limited 2 countries, so I just omit the European side. But I stayed in the United States 2.5 years, and in Europe it's only 1 year, and I visited different Zen centers. So for myself, Mount Equity is the strongest impression. And so that's why I focused on Mount Equity. But after end of my stay at Mount Equity, Daien Roshi had a Shinsan-shiki ceremony. And for that ceremony, one Japanese monk was invited. And he had a Zen center in Germany. A Japanese monk, but the abbot of Zen Center in Germany, and he played shakuhachi flute for the guest. It was very nice entertainment, and that monk asked me to come to his temple after I leave the Mount Equity, because next year he is going to have the same Shinzan-shiki ceremony in Germany. So I had some material, English materials. So he wanted to use that material and had planning to have the same ceremony. So I went to Germany from America. Then I stayed, it was a Humonji temple in southern part of Germany, then near Munich, and stay there for 6 months, prepare for his Shinzan-shiki. And his temple is the branch temple of Eiheiji. So many Japanese monks came to attend from Japan. So he needed someone to connect with German temple and Japanese temple, so I could help. Then stay there for 6 months, and that Shinzan-shiki was quite successful. Then for his Shinzan-shiki, one of the headquarters of Europe came as a guest. The headquarter is a Sokan, the top of the headquarter. And that Sokan is a friend of my master, my teacher. So he said, oh, her disciple is here, so why don't you send your disciple to all other Zen centers in Europe? It's good experience. So my teacher agreed that. So I could travel from Germany to Switzerland, Italy, France, Spain, etc. Several Zen centers. But these Zen centers are, short period. Sometimes 1 week, and sometimes 2 months, etc. And generally speaking, I think that's just my feeling. But in European people, like to copy Japanese traditional practice. Maybe because they have long history and they respect other history and try to follow the traditional way. So they chant in Japanese, even if they don't understand the meaning. Nowadays, they're translating, but at that time, most in Zen center, they chanted in Japanese. But in America, people try to understand the meaning of sutras. So immediately translate into English, and they try to understand, they try to make new style, American style of practice. So that's why I said it's creative. I think both are good, but if I compare both, European people like traditional way, Japanese way, and American people like creative American way. So practice is a little different. That's my feeling.
Okay. We have a question in the chat from Nikki. Yuko Sensei, let me just read. Meaningful way. Yuko Sensei, was your feelings the same about yourself and your flock as
Flock?
Christian nun as they are as a Soto Zen priest? If not, how is it different, the relationship with your Dankasan, your followers, as a Christian versus as a Buddhist? Did you understand that, Yuko?
Relationship with Dankasan? Relationship
Yes.
with lay.
How is it different? Yes, with lay people.
In Christianity and Buddhism? Good question. It's the first time I was asked. Well, relationship. In Catholicism, I think Catholic sisters are more kind and generous to lay people. Because especially in Japan, monks should be a little bit strict, and the practice it's separate. How can I say? For example, in Christianity, they emphasize love, right? Like Jesus Christ lost his life for other people, then just for Catholic sisters always try to help other people. And Buddhist priests also try to help, but the way of help is different. In Buddhism, we try to lay people stand by self. For example, sorry, it's difficult to explain, but for example, in Catholicism, if someone is falling down on the floor, just take the hand and wake him up. But in Buddhism, not immediately take the hand. Try to make him stand by himself. Do you understand the sense of difference? So, because in Catholicism, there's a God and there's a human being. The God always helps. But in Buddhism, there's no separation, God and human being, Buddha and human being. Buddha, we are Buddha. We all have Buddha nature, and we all have possibility to live, stand up by myself. So we try to wake him up. So basically, everybody has a capacity to stand up. So we try to realize themselves to have the power to stand up by himself. Do you understand the meaning?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yuko Sensei, I did understand. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for your question.
Okay, Yuko Sensei, two questions in the chat that are related. What first is by Daigaku Sensei, is by Dana Sensei.
Sorry. Your voice is chopped.
Daigaku Sensei's question: how many nuns live at Shogakuji? Can you hear? How many nuns live with you at Shogakuji?
How many? Now?
How many nuns at now?
Only 3.
Oh, okay, but hold on. Hold on, Yuko. Still more. Are many Japanese women interested in becoming a Buddhist nun? Are there more American women who are practicing as Soto nuns than there are Japanese nuns. So you were just telling me about the numbers of nuns in America or in the world versus nuns in Japan.
Mhm.
And then Dana Sensei's question, can you say something about Shogakuji and the lay community in Tokyo, the Dankasan? The temple opens on New Year's, for example. So what is the relationship with Shogakuji and the Dankasan
Okay.
or the lay community?
Mhm.
So
Okay.
those are two questions.
Okay. So first question is, so sorry, I missed the first question. Could you
How many nuns? How
Okay.
many nuns practice at Shogakuji and in Japan and in America?
Okay. In Shogakuji now only 3 nuns, the head priest and myself and Kokyo-san. Kokyo-san is a nun who practiced at other monasteries and also women's monasteries. We are a good friend. So Kokyo-san just came to Shogakuji last month. So now we could start daily practice together. So I'm very happy. But usually in Japanese temple, it's a family temple, mainly family temple, except for training monastery. So usually the only one priest and family. But we nuns basically don't get married. Some nuns get married, but basically don't get married. We keep sabbaths to single. So in one temple, not many nuns are living. So for now, only 3 in this temple and 1 female dog. And in Japan, the registered nun, Soto Zen nun, is about 700. And registered foreign nun is also about 700, almost same numbers, Japanese nun and non-Japanese nun in Soto Zen. But I would say most of Japanese registered nun is not live nun's life. They grow hair and living an ordinary life. They have job or family, or so number is almost same. But now nuns in foreign countries are more active and more serious practitioners, I would say. It's okay? Is that the answer?
And then what about you're at Shogakuji, what is your connection to the lay community?
Okay. Shogakuji is a Danka temple. So we have cemetery and we are taking care of family graves. We have about 350 Danka-san. Then they are coming for memorial services or prayer or funeral. So mainly we are taking care of their deceased ancestors for Danka-san. So Danka-san group and Zazen practitioner group are separate. There are few people are both. Danka-san practice Zazen, but only few people. So they are completely different groups. And most of Japanese temple emphasize only Danka-san and not serious about practice. But in this Shogakuji, I'd like to try, I'd like to make this practice congregation bigger and bigger. And my dream is to make a Zen center like Zenshuji or other foreign countries Zen center in this Shogakuji. So Danka-san part and practice part should be separate, and we should grow both and help each other. That's my dream. Does it make sense?
We have lots of time. Amy-san has a question. Why don't you just unmute yourself, Amy? Yes.
Hi, Emi-san.
Hi, Yuko. Good to see you, and thank you very much for your presentation today.
You're welcome.
I guess what it really impressed me as a woman and as a person is how objective you analyzed or were curious about things on every step of your life. And do, do you find that typical? I don't find that very typical about how objective you were. And I would think, particularly in Japan, that you got a lot of feedback. And you had mentioned about how you got removed from a monastery, but it didn't seem to dishearten you.
Disheartening.
Dishearten me. It didn't discourage you. It didn't make you feel like you failed. You just seemed to
Me?
on your curious or whatever you felt was moving you forward.
I felt failed many times. Each time, every time I felt, oh, I'm failed. I'm depressed, and now I'm finally I found my lifestyle, and yes, thank you very much. Good question. I should talk about that. Today, Lon-san told me my talking time is 40 minutes, so I just follow the story. Yes. But in fact, yes, I depressed a lot, and especially when I was young, I couldn't find my way, and even I commit to suicide because I couldn't find a way. In my deep sense, I was looking for something. I was looking for the way, and the atmosphere was not bad. I had a good family and good education, and not very rich, but the life was quite good. So if I just follow that ordinary life, maybe it was okay. I could graduate the university. Lon-san didn't mention at the beginning, but my first university was quite famous university, and my major was law. I tried to become a kind of lawyer. Then it was also unusual as a woman. Yes, but I was not satisfied. Something missing. Always I was something missing. Then when I see my friend looked very happy. You know, when we went travel, they just enjoy. I could enjoy, but in my deep sense, no, something different. I had a romantic pattern, and I dated many times. I was happy in one sense, but in my deep sense, I felt, no, something different. Always, I was thinking. Then I tried many things to satisfy myself, but I couldn't find the answer. So many years I was in a dark tunnel. Then I think late 20s, I tried to commit suicide, and I couldn't find the way. But finally, I realized, now I'm 55, then realized, yes, wherever I go, there is good thing and bad thing, both. And I should overcome some kind of suffering or some kind of difficult things. So I need to go anywhere. Mount Equity in Pennsylvania is just different side of globe from Japan, just opposite side of globe. So I went to the opposite side of globe, but still I felt something missing. I felt suffering. So suffering is here. So I don't need to go anywhere. Just be here, just be now, then I can overcome this suffering. I should overcome the suffering in here. I should find the way, and the answer is inside. I realized that's why I'm happy now. But it's just recently I realized it. Especially, I started to teach in monastery, and the younger nuns, novices, are just like me. You know, they are looking for some good things, and they are trying to make something good. They are trying to go somewhere good, but still they are making suffering for themselves. Now I can see them. So, yes, it was just like myself. So, yes. So I hope I can help themselves, and if they find the real happiness, or what you call the understanding, they can find the tranquility. So now finally I could understand. That's why I'm happy now. Yeah, but it was very, very difficult life. Yes.
But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I commend you on your journey,
Mhm.
and your words today, I think, are heartening, or give us as well a good story to hold on to for ourselves as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good question. Draws teaching for myself. Thank you.
Let me add here that since Amy Honjo just asked a question, Amy is our speaker for next month. We didn't.
Sorry. Your voice is choppy. Could you repeat?
Say that at the start. And oh, I'm sorry. I'm Yuko-san. I'm talking about next month. Next month
okay.
Lecture will be from Amy Honjo, who just asked the question about sustainability and her own journey to sustainable little Tokyo and Zen and environmental sustainability.
Okay.
Or like as Yuko says,
but we
it's
still
all
have
connected.
time for. We still have time. I can't see everybody, so if you're raising your hand, I'm not sure if I can see you. Just unmute yourself and ask a question, or raise your hand or put it in the chat. As people are thinking about it, I want to, Daigaku Sensei is still here. And initially, I had paired both Yuko Sensei and Daigaku Sensei together because they both come from a Christian background. As you recall, those of you who heard Daigaku Sensei's talk, he came to Japan as a young man, child perhaps, because his father was a Christian missionary in Japan. So he comes from a Christian background. And I'm wondering, Daigaku Sensei, let me sort of ask you to speak about, not just about Yuko's talk, but about this connection between Christianity and Buddhism, or lack of connection, just your thoughts when you put those two faiths together, and as you've heard Yuko Sensei. So I'm wondering if you can talk about your thoughts about this.
Me?
Oh, Daigaku Sensei.
Daigaku.
You're muted, Daigaku.
I see them as quite different, Lon. But I want to say at the beginning that one of the lovely things about Buddhism, I feel, is the tolerance for what other people believe. If it works for you, great. Just don't tell me what to believe. And I think there's a lot of that in Christianity. And I think that's changing somewhat. Now I live in St. Louis, which is quite a conservative town, I have to say, compared to California. Even here, there's a little bit of, that's changing. But especially when I was growing up, my father was a missionary in Japan. The idea was that Christians have it, and we've got to tell you, we want to save you. We're going to try and save you. And even as a young man, that didn't really resonate with me. And over the years, it's just become more and more clear that as one person, I'm not in favor of that kind of teaching. The second big difference, well, there's a number of differences, but as Yuko Sensei was saying very clearly, in Christianity, there's always two things, at least two things. God is always outside of you. But in Buddhism, it's all one. There's no separation. Everything is the Buddha. So this is another huge difference. And a third one that comes to mind is the idea of original sin, that you find so strong in Christianity, that we're born into sin, that human beings are born into sin. There's this fundamental flaw. And this was something I felt when I was young, growing up in Japan, that the kids were treated like Buddhas. That it wasn't that you were a bad child, but no, the kids were they were treated like Buddhas. And again, this is just such a big difference. It's not to say that people are perfect, but still there's this pure. That's what comes to mind off the top of my mind.
Thank you. Yes, I really agree, completely agree. I have a question to Daigaku Sensei. Is it okay?
Yes, sure.
What do you think about the difference between Christian confession in Christianity and repentance in Buddhism?
This is also very different. In Buddhism, we say repentance in deed and in essence. And my teacher always emphasized that we stress in essence. So it's a very different idea of confession. Of course, in Christianity, it's the Catholics who have this tradition of going to the priest and admitting or confessing your various sins. But in Buddhism, at least as I was taught, confession is to give up the ego, to really forget the self. And so Zazen, what we think of as Zazen is also a form of repentance in the sense of giving up the self, of forgetting the self. But it's not a matter of admitting that you've done this or this bad thing, because in that sense, the self is always remaining. There's always somebody who has made the confession. So it's, again, very different, as I understand it. Yeah.
How about the precepts?
Yes, that's another interesting thing. Again, different too. Of course, we have precepts that are very similar to the Ten Commandments in some ways. But finally, the precepts are also about giving up the self, about giving up the ego. It's not a matter of simply following the rules. My teacher used to say that to follow the precepts, is to break the precepts. And the reason is that there's somebody following the precepts. So there's two things. And Zen is really about one thing.
What do you mean?
How about you, Yuko Sensei? What do you think? What is your sense of the precepts?
Yes, now we are practicing about precepts. In Soto, then we take 16 precepts. Then using the Shushogi, we are studying precepts in the Zenkai. And one person have a question. If we don't take precept, we cannot continue Buddhist practice. That's her question. For example, in Christianity, priests try to make people taking precepts and baptized. Right? That's my impression. And so if people continue coming to church, everybody should be recommended to take baptized and taking precept. But in Buddhism, many people come to the temple and practice a long time, but priests don't recommend taking precept. That's my impression. What do you think, Daigo Sensei? Do you recommend taking
that's a big difference between in Japan and America. My teacher, Harada Roshi, was not very fond of giving the precepts to lay people. And one of the reasons was that it becomes, for a lay person, it becomes confusing sometimes. What's the difference between a lay person and a priest or a monk? They've both taken the precepts. They're the same precepts. And so it can become confusing, he thought. He said, well, if you want to take the precepts, become ordained. But here in America, many lay people do take the precepts. And I also have been concerned that there might be this confusion in their mind, but I have given the precepts to a number of people. In fact, I see 2 or 3 of them. There's Amy and Loretta, and maybe that's the only ones right now. But that is something we do here as one practice, to give the precepts. So it's a little bit different, I feel, in Japan that way.
There's a Nikki-san has a question for both of you, Daigaku Sensei and Yuko Sensei. I know Yuko Sensei's family was Buddhist, and Daigaku Sensei's family is Christian. How did your families respond, Daigaku, when you became a Buddhist, and how did they respond, Yuko, when you became a Catholic?
Yuko, please go first. Yuko Sensei.
Thank you. Lady first.
Ladies first, yes.
When I became a Catholic nun, my father was furious. And my mother cried. It was very hard time. When I was going to the church, it was okay. But when I decided to enter the monastery, they were so upset, both of them, because the rule of Catholic monastery was very strict, especially it was cloistered monastery. So even if parents died, I couldn't go out for the funeral. So they were very shocked, and they they can visit the monastery, but there is a special room, and there's like a counter between parents and myself. And a long time ago, there's a fence there, just like jail. But now there's no fence, but still the counter there. So the separate area. Then the meeting time is limited. So my parents were very upset, and so I took many months to persuade them, and finally my mother accepted, and she persuaded my father. And now later I converted to Buddhism. They are happy, yeah, because they are originally Buddhist, so they felt a little. I came closer, and now my father already passed away, and my mother is kind of sick, but she is living alone, and now after this pandemic starts, I'm really worried about my mother, and I invited her to online Zazen. We are practicing Zazen online every morning from 4 o'clock. Then I invited her because she is using Zoom in old friends, old group. So if I told to my mother, if you can use Zoom, why don't you join Zazen every morning? And she said, okay. And since then, she joins Zazen every morning. I sometimes cannot join because I have to go out, but my mother always, every morning. She is already 84, so I don't think she's doing Zazen, but maybe just sitting in front of computer and just watching people, maybe. But still, every morning she joins. And one day she told me, you know, Yuko-san, my mother called me Yuko-san. It's not my born name, but Dharma name. She just called me Yuko-san. I'm happy to join Zazen online. I can see monks and nuns every day. And maybe my life is not very long anymore, but I can see their practice. I can join their practice every day. I'm really happy, she told me. So I thought, now I can repair her. This is the greatest gift I can give her. Now my mother is happy to be to my spiritual life.
In my case, I think my mother supported me all along. She had 7 children. She's no longer alive. And I think she supported, we all went different ways. And in my case as well, she came to visit me several times at the monastery and met my teacher several times. And I think she was a bodhisattva. Even though she didn't practice Zazen, she was, I think, a Buddhist at heart. For my father was much more difficult. He had gone to Japan with the idea that he was going to tell Japanese people about Christianity and probably try to convert them as well. That was surprisingly difficult for him to do that, because relatively few Japanese people actually become Christians. But here he had gone to Japan to teach about Christianity. Now his oldest son, me, had decided to take a different path, and I think that was fairly self-evident even from when I was much younger than that. But as time went on, my father in Japan, And he changed too. Everything's impermanent, including fathers. And as he was there over the years, he became quite in love with Japan. And I think he could sense something about what I had done in a way that I always said when he died, he agreed with me about 80%, which isn't bad. You know, sometimes parents just don't agree with what their kids do, and I think he did pretty well considering the situation.
Yeah, for Christian people, it's more difficult to accept other religion because of that teaching. Buddhism is more broad and more open to other religion. That's my feeling. So it must be quite difficult for your parents. But as long as Daigaku Sensei is doing well as a Buddhist priest, I believe he will happy. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Maybe one last one, because I have, oh, Loretta, do you want to have a question? No? Go ahead.
It's not really a question. I just wanted to say thank you, Yuko-san, because you not only gave us a very clear outline of your progression as a person of faith and depth, but what is very meaningful for me as your listener is that you also told us the internal changes, the very deep internal gesture of change. And I think it's a little bit rare when people can articulate these deep internal choices. So it was very rich for me. I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. You know, Dharma talk is very interesting. Maybe listeners can get more than I talk. Depend on their pace or their interest. Listener can understand by themselves Dharma more. So I'm really happy. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
We have 2 minutes left. And again, I can't see all of you. So if you want to unmute yourself and say something or put it in the chat. Okay. Kojima Sensei, did you want to close? You're muted, Kojima Sensei.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Yuko-san. It was a very interesting and meaningful lecture. I'm very excited to listen all your story of life. And thank you, everyone, for participating in this lecture series. Next lecture will be May 21st at 5 p.m. And the theme is Mottainai, Zen Approach to Sustainability by Amy Honjo. Amy-san, I'm very expecting your lecture too. Thank you very much. And Don-san, is that everything over? Everything okay? Okay.
I just wanted to add, there was a question in the chat that this recording, as all our recordings, will be on Zenshuji's YouTube channel within a week or so. We'll figure out the editing of it. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Yuko-san. ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
はい。す
Thank
ごく
you,
いいお話でした。ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。